In last week's episode, we talked about Deadpool and asked whether or not his fourth wall breaking could be explained phenomenologically. Let's see what you had to say. Okay, so first things first, to everyone who is new to Idea Channel, because you found us from Scott and NerdSync, welcome. It's great to have you. Great to see your shining faces. I look forward to all of the comments that you will write in response to the questions we will ask. It's going to be some good conversations. And to everyone who asked where my Deadpool cardigan came from, it is a We Love Fine cardigan. I don't know. This is a pattern that's developing. I don't know exactly where it came from because my girlfriend got it for me. She is the best. Hi, Molly. Everybody thinks you have good taste. Okay, comments for real this time. 15 inches on the subreddit and a bunch of people on YouTube all mentioned Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, which is a sort of super interesting case study in how Deadpool's inner monologue functions. But before we talk about it, spoiler alert, because we're going to talk about the things that happen in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, so we'll put an annotation somewhere or a link in the doobly-doo so that you can skip this comment response if you don't want to know what happens. So, spoiler alert, this is your official spoiler alert. In Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, Deadpool has his yellow and white boxes essentially cured, and they are replaced with a red box that tells him to go around killing everybody else in the Marvel Universe, all of the heroes specifically. Most notably, like Professor X dies after trying to control Deadpool's brain to get him to stop, and then Professor X realizes what is inside Deadpool's head, says something like, I didn't realize, or I never understood, and then has an aneurysm and dies, and then Deadpool gets access via Man-Thing to the multiverse, where his first stop is something that looks remarkably our universe, where there are comic book writers, and I think you can spy a Jordan White in there, where he then turns to the camera, to the reader, and puts his finger over his mouth as if to indicate, be quiet, I'm going to kill the writers who are the puppet masters of all of the people in the Marvel Universe, and then everyone's going to be free, etc., etc. What I love about this story is exactly what 15 Inches says, that it gives you insight into how the other characters think about Deadpool. The inciting incident of Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe is everybody putting him, sort of agreeing that he should be in an institution. He gets put into an institution because everybody is like, yes, Deadpool is nuts. But the other thing I love about it is that it hinges on the multiverse, which, so many things do. It's the comics writing's Deus Ex Machina par excellence. So where Deadpool gets access to the multiverse, he ends up in a universe that looks remarkably like ours, with comics writers who look remarkably like ours, writing Deadpool or, comics, Marvel comics, who he then kills. Just awesome. So given that Deadpool has killed his writers, we can assume one of three things is the case, sort of textually. That Deadpool has been instantiated in the real world, has been made actual through his travel in the multiverse, and so this book is more of a documentary, I guess. The second thing the second option is that there is a writer who has a death wish, and so is writing Deadpool to come to the writer's room to kill him and, I guess, his pals. Or the third thing that could be the case is that there is another writer in another universe as part of the multiverse that is sending Deadpool around to kill comics writers in other parts of the multiverse, and that is who is skippering Deadpool via the red box. I'm gonna guess that it's Stan Lee sort of taking out decades of office politics just on other comics writers in the multiverse. I think it makes perfect sense to me, but that's fan theory territory. Anyway, I think this story arc still fits really perfectly within the idea that Deadpool's abilities are in some way phenomenological, because everything that happens from, Deadpool's being cured of his two original boxes via the operation that Psycho Man puts on him to, Professor Xavier's death after trying to gain access to his brain, to his being instantiated in the real world, in some sense, they are all embodied. It's all about being embodied and Deadpool's corpus, in some sense. Which is to say nothing about 15 Inch's additional comment about our relationship to Deadpool. Like, if Deadpool is looking out to us, are we in some way a deity to him? Or are we part of his imagining of what the world is, and it just so happens that in our universe that tends to be right? And this gets to the point that the tweet of the week this week made, which is questioning whether or not we are in some sense Deadpool. We are a part of his psyche. And I mean, I'm gonna let you guys battle that one out in the comments below, because I've said enough about this comment already. NinjaBoy333 also on the subreddit writes a really great comment about Deadpool's physical characteristics also unlocking some kind of Toon Force power, which is an idea that I love. I love this idea, and indicates or suggests a comparison that Ninja Boy talks about that I never considered, which is, comparing Deadpool as trickster to other Toon tricksters like Bugs Bunny, which I think that the archetype definitely connects across those two characters and universes. It's great. Never thought about this. Ninja Boy also brings up Deadpool's literal relationship with the physical manifestation of death in the Marvel Universe, which is a thing that I did not think at all about while writing the episode, and is something that I'm going to mull over for the rest of tonight, because that's a really good point. Dashery writes a really amazing comment about Deadpool's fourth wall breaking being a result not of his physical state, but of his mental state, and specifically his loneliness, which is this is great and super interesting. A link to this comment and all of the others in the doobly-doo. Definitely read this. Yeah, you should read it. Dale MacKinnon on YouTube, along with a bunch of other people, made the really good point that Deadpool, of course, is not the only person, not the only comic book character to break the fourth wall. And, there was, at one point, a section in the video, we even shot it, talking about other characters that break the fourth wall. Specifically, we had mentions of, Spider-Man and Animal Man, and then also other characters that are in pain, that experience, as far as we understand as audience members, great pain, and still don't break the fourth wall. So sort of taking those characteristics as they exist in other comic book characters and showing how Deadpool is different in some way. And to make the point really quickly, I think it's not to say that every character that breaks the fourth wall has to have the same phenomenological experience that Deadpool does, that they have to be in pain. It's just that I think Deadpool's set of characteristics can be looked at phenomenologically and can just show us new and possibly interesting things about the character. Does that mean that Wolverine or Psylocke or Jean Grey, like characters who experience pain, does that mean that they then should be breaking the fourth wall? No, not necessarily, but if they were to do that, we might use the same set of ideas to explain how and why that might be. So, not forcing anyone's hand. You don't have to think about She-Hulk in the same way you think about Deadpool. I mean, unless you want to. You're more than welcome. Ian Dooley, whose name I'm sure I'm butchering, so I'm very sorry, writes a really amazing comment about psychology as it relates to Merleau-Ponty's phenomenological ideas and Deadpool, and talks specifically about Cotard syndrome, which is a syndrome where one believes they are dead or that they do not even exist, and they make the sort of put together this theory that is perhaps what Deadpool is suffering from. And this is another, I think, required reading comment. It's just super interesting, really great stuff that I knew nothing about. So yeah, links to this and the others, doobly-doo. Read it. So there is this attitude that science and philosophy are at odds, that, scientists need to wrangle philosophers in some way who get all caught up in their ideas, that science is very practical and philosophy is this useless art almost that doesn't really defend its own existence. And I clearly don't think those things are true, and I have lots of ideas about why I feel the way I do about the importance of philosophy. Not the importance of philosophy over science, because, no, this is shocking, two things can be really important. But what I will say, Aditya, and to anyone else actually who feels this way, that we need some scientists in here to wrangle and argue with the philosophers, I would love to know What about science is important and influential? And then I will respond to your response to that question in next week's comment response video, and we'll talk about, maybe back and forth over a couple videos, how that distinction comes about and how we think about it and how we can navigate it. So, if you would humor me, I would love to have this conversation. If you would not humor me, that's also fine. I would love to just, continue having it with myself. That sounds sad.